on the morning of January 7, 2026, at exactly 11:02 a.m. Philippine time. A powerful magnitude 6.7 earthquake struck off the coast of Mindanao, sending shockwaves across the entire southern Philippine island, and triggering panic as residents rushed out of buildings, fearing for their lives. The epicenter was located approximately 68 kilometers east of Baculin, in the southern town of Hinatuan, Surigao del Sur province, at a shallow depth of just 10 kilometers beneath the ocean floor. This was not an isolated event, but the latest in a series of powerful earthquakes that have been hammering the same region since late 2025, raising urgent questions about whether the Philippine Trench is building towards something even more catastrophic. Philippine immediately warned of expected damage and aftershocks, and while there were no immediate reports of casualties, the quake was strong enough to be felt across multiple provinces, prompting evacuations and business shutdowns. According to the United States Geological Survey, the earthquake measured magnitude 6.7 and struck at 11:02 a.m. local time on January 7, 2026. The USGS initially reported the magnitude as 6.7, though some reports mentioned it was later adjusted to 6.4 by Philippine, which is not uncommon as seismologists refine their calculations using additional data from monitoring stations. The epicenter was pinpointed at 68 kilometers east of a village in Hinatuan, Surigao del Sur, placing it offshore in the Philippine Sea, directly above the Philippine Trench subduction zone. The depth of the earthquake was measured at approximately 10 kilometers, which is considered shallow for a tectonic quake, and means that the energy released was concentrated closer to the surface, resulting in stronger shaking felt over a wider area. Intensity reports from Philippine showed that the earthquake was felt across a broad swath of Mindanao. Baculin town in Sarangani province registered an instrumental intensity which indicates moderately strong shaking, capable of waking sleeping people, rattling dishes, and causing hanging objects to swing. Davao City, the largest urban center in Mindanao, and home to more than 1.6 million people, experienced reported intensity 2, meaning the tremor was slightly felt, but not strong enough to cause alarm among most residents. However, in towns closer to the epicenter, such as Hinatuan local police chief, Joey Monado, reported that while the shaking was not extremely violent, people immediately rushed outside as a precaution, and businesses temporarily halted operations as everyone waited to see if stronger aftershocks would follow. Critically, no tsunami warning was issued by either Philippine or the U.S. Geological Survey's Pacific Tsunami Warning Center. As the earthquake's characteristics indicated, it was unlikely to displace enough ocean water to generate dangerous waves. However, Philippine did warn that damage and aftershocks were expected, and residents near the epicenter were advised to stay alert for structural damage to buildings, bridges, and roads, as well as possible landslides in mountainous areas. Now, let's put this earthquake in context. The January 7th quake struck almost the exact same location where a devastating magnitude 7.4 earthquake occurred just 3 months earlier, on October 10, 2025. That October event, which was also offshore from Davao Oriental, near the town of Manay, triggered tsunami warnings across Mindanao and the Visayas, and was followed within hours by a magnitude 6.9 aftershock, creating what Philippine described as a doublet quake, meaning to significant earthquakes in rapid succession from the same fault zone. At least one person was killed in the October sequence, and thousands of residents were forced to evacuate coastal areas as tsunami alerts flashed across their phones. The fact that the January 7th earthquake struck in nearly the same location, at a similar depth, and with a magnitude exceeding 6.5, suggests that this section of the Philippine Trench remains extremely active and under immense tectonic stress. To understand why this region keeps getting hit by powerful earthquakes, we need to look at the tectonic structure beneath the ocean. The Philippine Trench is a massive subduction zone, where the Philippine Sea Plate is diving westward beneath the Philippine Mobile Belt at a rate of about 10 centimeters per year. This collision zone stretches for roughly 1,320 kilometers along the eastern side of the Philippine archipelago, starting from the Bicol region in Luzon and running south past the eastern coasts of Samar, Leyte, and Mindanao. The trench is one of the deepest places on Earth, reaching a maximum depth of 10,540 meters in some sections. As the oceanic plate grinds beneath the continental plate, friction locks the two surfaces together, and stress accumulates over years, decades, or even centuries until the locked section finally slips, releasing energy in the form of an earthquake. Scientific modeling shows that the Philippine Trench has the potential to generate a magnitude 9.0 megaquake, an event that would release more than 30 times the energy of a magnitude 8 and nearly 1,000 times the energy of a magnitude 7. Researchers have modeled 3 hypothetical scenarios along the Philippine Trench: a magnitude 8.0, a magnitude 8.5, and a magnitude 9.0 rupture. In the worst-case magnitude 9.0 scenario, a massive section of the trench, stretching hundreds of kilometers, could slip all at once, displacing billions of tons of water and creating tsunami waves that would inundate the eastern coasts of Mindanao, Samar, Leyte, and parts of Palawan within minutes. Tens of thousands of lives could be lost in coastal communities that have little to no warning time and limited evacuation infrastructure. The October 2025 magnitude 7.4 earthquake and the January 2026 magnitude 6.7 earthquake are both significant events, but they are not the megaquake that scientists fear. However, they are clear indicators that the Philippine Trench is not sleeping. Seismologists are watching this region closely because the pattern of repeated large earthquakes in the same area can sometimes signal that stress is building toward an even larger rupture. It is important to emphasize that there is no scientific method to predict exactly when a major earthquake will occur, and many earthquake sequences, even intense ones, do not lead to a magnitude 8 or 9 event. But the fact remains that the Philippine Trench is capable of producing such a quake, and every significant earthquake, like the one on January 7th, is a reminder that Mindanao and the Visayas remain at high risk. Let's compare the January 7th, 2026 earthquake to other recent major quakes in the Philippines. In terms of magnitude, a 6.7 quake is considered strong and is capable of causing significant damage near the epicenter, especially in areas with older buildings or structures not designed to withstand intense shaking. However, the October 2025 magnitude 7.4 earthquake was nearly 3 times more powerful in terms of energy released, because each full step up on the magnitude scale represents roughly 32 times more energy. The September 30th, 2025 magnitude 6.9 earthquake near Cebu, which killed 74 people and forced thousands to flee their homes, was also more powerful than the January 7th event, though it occurred farther inland and in a more densely populated area, which contributed to the higher casualty count. What makes the January 7th earthquake particularly concerning is its shallow depth. At just 10 kilometers below the ocean floor, the earthquake's energy was released relatively close to the surface, meaning that the shaking felt on land was stronger than it would have been if the quake had originated deeper underground. Shallow earthquakes are also more likely to cause landslides and liquefaction, especially in areas with loose sediment or steep slopes. Fortunately, because the epicenter was offshore and the quake struck during daylight hours, when most people were awake and able to react quickly, casualties were avoided. But the next earthquake in this region might not be so forgiving, especially if it occurs at night when people are sleeping, or if it is significantly stronger. Let's look at which areas of Mindanao and the Visayas are most at risk if the Philippine Trench produces a larger earthquake in the future. The provinces along the eastern coast of Mindanao, including Davao, Oriento, Surigao del Norte, and Sur, Agusan del Norte and Dinagat Islands, all sit directly in the path of any tsunami generated by a major rupture of the trench. Coastal barangays in these provinces often lack reinforced evacuation centers and clear tsunami routes. And public awareness about earthquake and tsunami risks remains dangerously low in many rural communities. In the Visayas, the eastern coasts of Samar and Leyte are extremely exposed, and many communities are still recovering from Super Typhoon Yolanda, which devastated the region in 2013, meaning that infrastructure is already weakened and resources for disaster response are limited. Even major cities, like Davao City and General Santos, are not immune. While they may experience lower intensity shaking due to their distance from the epicenter, a magnitude 8 or 9 earthquake could still cause widespread damage to buildings, bridges, and critical infrastructure, especially if the shaking is prolonged or if secondary effects like fires and power outages cascade across the region. The economic impact of such an event would be catastrophic, potentially setting back development in Mindanao by decades and overwhelming the national government's disaster response capacity. So what should residents of Mindanao and the Visayas do in response to the January 7th earthquake and the ongoing seismic unrest in the region? First, understand that aftershocks are expected and can continue for days or even weeks after a major earthquake. Some aftershocks can be nearly as strong as the main quake, so do not assume the danger has passed just because the initial shaking has stopped. Second, inspect your home and workplace for structural damage, especially cracks in walls, ceilings, or foundations that may have been weakened by the earthquake. If you live in an older building or one that was not designed to withstand strong shaking, consider whether it is safe to remain inside or whether you should relocate temporarily. Third, prepare an emergency kit that includes at least 3 days' worth of water, non-perishable food, a flashlight with extra batteries, a battery-operated radio, first aid supplies, and copies of important documents in waterproof pouches. Keep this kit in an accessible location so you can grab it quickly if another strong earthquake strikes or if a tsunami warning is issued. Fourth, know your evacuation routes, especially if you live in a coastal area within 2 kilometers of the shore and at low elevation. Identify the nearest high ground or vertical evacuation building and practice the route with your family so that everyone knows exactly where to go if a tsunami warning is issued. Fifth, learn the natural warning signs of a tsunami. Strong earthquake shaking that lasts more than 30 seconds is an automatic evacuation signal. Do not wait for official alerts. If you see the ocean receding dramatically, exposing the seafloor, you have only minutes to reach safety. And finally, stay informed by monitoring Philippines bulletins, following official social media accounts, and listening to local radio stations for updates on aftershocks, tsunami alerts, and disaster response operations. The January 7, 2026 magnitude 6.7 earthquake off Mindanao is a stark reminder that the Philippines sits on one of the most geologically active zones on the planet. The Philippine Trench, the Manila Trench, the West Valley Fault, and dozens of other fault systems and subduction zones are all capable of producing devastating earthquakes and tsunamis. We cannot predict when the next big one will strike, but we can prepare, and that preparation starts today, with every household understanding the risks, knowing what to do during an earthquake, and having a plan in place to protect their families. If this video helped you understand what happened on January 7th, and why Mindanao remains at high risk, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel so we can continue bringing you critical disaster updates and preparedness information. Share this video with your family, neighbors, and local barangay groups so more Filipinos can stay informed and prepared. And make sure to watch the other videos on this channel. Click the playlist link in the description. Break down the Philippine Trench, the Manila Trench, the West Valley Fault, Taal Volcano, Canlaon Volcano, and all the other hidden dangers threatening our islands, because understanding where the threats come from is the first step in protecting the people you love. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you get instant alerts when we post new emergency updates. Stay safe, stay prepared, and we'll see you in the next video.